In the misty Appalachian valleys, Sarah Bennett, a lone farmer, was about to witness a miracle. What started as a routine morning tending her mare Midnight took a shocking turn when 12 foals, each glowing with elemental power, emerged from the stall. Sarah wasn't your typical farmer. For over 20 years, she had cared for her family's land, known for courage and intuition. When the magical foals appeared, she had no idea she was stepping into danger and destiny. Her quick decisions would forge a bond that would change the mountain and her world forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Appalachian morning was crisp, a chill clinging to the valleys and slipping beneath Sarah Bennett's woolen jacket. Mist curled among the pine trees like smoke from an unseen fire. The forest floor glimmered with dew, and the scent of damp earth and wild herbs hung thick. Sarah inhaled deeply, grounding herself against the tide of anticipation. Today, Midnight, her beloved mare, was to give birth. She had tended this small farm for over 20 years, inherited from her parents when age and illness demanded it. Every corner of the land carried memories: the creek where she had first learned to fish, the barn where her father's tools still hung, the oak grove where she and her son, Ethan, had climbed together when he was small. Now, she was alone in the early morning quiet, save for the mare's restless whinnies and the faint rustling of awakening wildlife. Midnight pawed at the straw, her dark eyes flicking between Sarah and the empty stall, where the new life would soon appear. Sarah crouched beside her, murmuring reassurances. "It's all right, girl. Everything's going to be fine." Her chest tightened, a mix of worry and wonder. The birth of a foal was always a marvel, but today a strange tension electrified the air, as if something extraordinary waited to unfold. Minutes stretched into hours. Midnight shifted, her flanks heaving. Sarah glanced briefly toward the farmhouse. Ethan slept upstairs, unaware of the miracle or anomaly about to occur. She wanted to call him down, but instinct held her still. Birth demanded quiet, reverence, attention. The first foal emerged, wet and trembling, delicate legs and bright eyes, capturing Sarah's relief and awe. But then another appeared, and another, then a fourth. Her breath caught as she realized there were 12 newborn foals nestled together, each unique and remarkable. One glimmered with a soft inner light, shifting like sunlight on water. Another left frost on the straw, melting before her astonished eyes. A third radiated gentle warmth, making the air shimmer. Midnight nuzzled each one, her maternal instincts unwavering, but Sarah's mind raced. These were no ordinary foals. "Sarah!" A voice called hesitantly from the farmhouse doorway. Ethan, hair mussed from sleep, peered out with curiosity and caution. "Mum, what's happening?" "I thought it was just one." His skepticism wrestled with awe. Are they okay?" "They're more than okay," Sarah whispered, "but they're not ordinary." She brushed her hand over the frosted foal, marveling at how its small form seemed carved from the mountain itself. Ethan crouched, hesitant, then extended his hand. One foal, translucent and moonlit, sniffed before retreating to huddle with its siblings. Skepticism gave way to wonder. "Mom, they're magical, right?" Sarah nodded slowly. "I think so, but we must be careful. We can't let anyone know, not yet." Her mind flicked to the edge of the forest where Jack Mason prowled. He had a history of exploiting anything unusual. If he saw these foals, disaster would follow. From the shadows, Jack watched. His eyes, sharp and calculating, followed the faint shimmer of light in the foal's eyes. A grin spread across his face. 12 magical creatures. This was more than he'd ever hoped for. "That's my ticket," he whispered. Inside the stable, Sarah wrestled with the moral weight of her responsibility. Villagers would never believe what she had seen. The mountain itself, vast and secretive, seemed to hum around the foals, responding to their presence. She could feel the pulse of something ancient beneath her feet. Alive and watchful, Ethan, still kneeling, gently touched the moonlit foal. "I want to help them, Mom," he said, voice steady. "I don't care if they're magical." "They need us." Sarah grasped his hand with a strength born of love and urgency. Yes, we protect them, no matter what. They worked cautiously, moving the foals to a hidden grove near the barn, a secluded valley framed by ancient trees and a winding creek. Makeshift shelters were crafted, bramble cleared carefully, fresh straw laid. Each foal reacted unpredictably, sparks from the fiery-eyed one, a miniature whirlwind from another, frost forming and vanishing from delicate hooves. Every display of elemental magic reminded Sarah that these creatures were more than animals. They were living embodiments of the mountain itself. Midnight stood watch at the grove's edge, alert and protective. Ethan stroked her neck. "She trusts us," he said softly. "If she does, maybe we can handle this." Sarah smiled faintly. "We'll have to. There's no turning back now." As the sun climbed, the mountains seemed to respond. Birds scattered in perfect flocks, crows cawed in warning, and a faint vibration ran through the soil. The foals stirred instinctively, huddling together. Sarah shivered, not from cold, but from realizing their presence might ripple far beyond the valley. Ethan watched the frosted foal, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. "It's like they understand us," he murmured. "And maybe we understand them." A warmth threaded through him, the first step toward a bond that would define the coming months. Sarah surveyed the hidden valley. Each foal pulsed with elemental power. One shimmered silver, another radiated hearth-like warmth, a third flickered with shadows, and others displayed subtler abilities yet to be discovered. Personality and instinct shone through their magical essence. They were alive in ways Sarah could feel deep in her bones, not just creatures, but forces of the mountain. Time passed, and a fragile calm settled. Sarah allowed herself a breath, drinking in the beauty of these extraordinary creatures. She looked at Ethan, who mirrored her awe. "We'll figure this out together." Yet danger lingered. Jack Mason would not forget. And the mountain, ancient and alive, hinted at challenges to come. The foals were magical, but magic, like life, was unpredictable. Responsibility would demand courage, wisdom, and the strength of her bond with Ethan. The wind whispered through trees, and the creek bubbled gently. Sarah felt the full weight of her duty. These were no ordinary foals. They were a secret of the mountains, a living legend, and she and Ethan were now its guardians. The day stretched on with quiet observation, gentle care, and cautious excitement. Each foal's magic revealed itself in subtle ways, testing Sarah's patience and Ethan's growing understanding. Frost, sparks, gentle light, whispers of wind, each phenomenon seemed tied to the mountain's rhythm, a reminder that nature and the mystical were inseparable. Though the world, beyond the hidden valley, remained unaware, within the grove a new chapter of life, magic and moral responsibility had begun. The mountain held its breath, and so did they. The valley where Sarah and Ethan had hidden the 12 foals seemed almost untouched by time. Thick clusters of oak and hickory framed the clearing, their leaves whispering secrets in the gentle wind. Moss covered the boulders scattered across the meadow, and the creek's water sparkled with an unusual clarity, reflecting the morning sun in 1,000 fractured lights. Sarah moved quietly, guiding Ethan as they approached the foals, their soft whinnies mingling with the rustle of the forest. Each step brought a mixture of awe and apprehension. She could sense that the creature's presence was subtly affecting the air itself. "Look at them," Ethan whispered, crouching near the water-element foal, which waded into the shallow stream, sending ripples sparkling with tiny motes of glowing light. "It's like they're alive in ways that aren't just animal." He reached out, and the foal nudged his hand gently, leaving a faint trace of warmth that lingered like a memory. Ethan drew back, eyes wide. "Mom, this is incredible," Sarah nodded, her mind racing. "It's incredible, yes, but dangerous if anyone else finds out. You saw the shimmer of fire on that one yesterday. If people knew—" She swallowed, the words catching in her throat. "They'd try to take them, or worse." Her gaze swept the grove, lingering on each foal as if willing them to understand their new guardian's intentions. They had already begun to display personalities. The fiery one stomped impatiently, its eyes flickering with impatience, while the shadowy one skulked near the tree line, observing with cautious, intelligent wariness. The forest seemed to respond to the foal's presence. Leaves trembled without wind, and a faint hum resonated through the earth beneath their feet. Sarah felt it in her chest, a low vibration that reminded her of old tales her mother had whispered long ago. Stories of spirits of the mountain, protectors of the forest and the land, awakened only when human greed threatened to tip the balance. She remembered one particular legend, about 12 elemental guardians born from the mountains themselves, creatures that appeared only when their power was needed to preserve harmony. Could this be real? Her heart said yes, though her mind struggled to reconcile it with everyday reality. "I think we need help," she said finally, kneeling beside Ethan and letting her hands brush over the foal's warm coats. "We can't do this alone," Ethan frowned. "You mean, tell the village? They'd never believe us. They'd exploit them," Sarah finished grimly. "Exactly. We need guidance, someone who understands these legends, someone like Maggie." By mid-morning, the two of them had packed a small satchel with provisions and set out on the narrow mountain path toward the village. The trail wound through thick pines, over roots slick with dew, and along cliffs where the wind whistled with a haunting song. Sarah felt the weight of her decision pressing upon her, each step echoing the moral responsibility she now carried. Ethan matched her pace, though his curiosity betrayed him at every twist in the path. He kept glancing back toward the hidden valley, imagining the foals moving freely, exercising powers he barely understood. When they arrived at Maggie Harper's cabin, a weathered structure nestled against a hillside, smoke curling lazily from the stone chimney, the smell of burning wood and herbs greeted them. Maggie herself emerged from the doorway, her eyes sharp despite the gentle wrinkles that lined her face. Her long silver hair was tied loosely, and her robes, faded but well kept, smelled faintly of sage and mountain herbs. "Sarah Bennett," Maggie said, her voice carrying both warmth and an underlying gravity. "You found them, haven't you?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "Yes, 12 of them. They're not ordinary foals." Maggie's eyes softened briefly, then grew serious. "I feared as much. The mountains have been restless, and the old legends speak true. Elemental guardians awaken only when the balance is threatened. The 12 you have found, they are those very guardians." Ethan blinked, skeptical yet intrigued. "Guardians? Like magical horses?" Maggie's lips curved faintly. "More than that, young man. Each embodies a force of nature. Fire, water, wind, earth, lightning, even aspects less tangible, shadow, memory, dream. They are born from the mountain itself, bound to its health, and by extension to the well-being of all who dwell here." Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. The magnitude of their responsibility dawned fully upon her. She had thought she was protecting 12 fragile lives, but in truth, she was steward to something far greater, a force ancient, unpredictable, and deeply entwined with the natural world. Maggie ushered them inside, where the cabin smelled of dried herbs, old books, and candle wax. "You must understand," Maggie said, pulling a worn leather tome from the shelf. "These creatures are sensitive. They respond to emotion, to the intentions of those around them. If approached with fear or greed, they can become dangerous. If approached with care, with respect, they will flourish." She opened the tome to illustrations of elemental creatures, sketches so precise they seemed almost alive. "And you," she said, fixing Sarah with a steady gaze, "are their guardian. Your choices now will determine not only their survival, but the safety of the mountain itself." Sarah nodded, absorbing every word. She remembered the fire element foal from yesterday, stamping and snorting near the barn, leaving small scorch marks in the hay, and the frost-footed one, whose breath left delicate patterns across the ground. Even the wind element foal had caused leaves to whirl in miniature storms. These powers were not mere tricks. They were extensions of something far older, far more potent than her understanding. Ethan, meanwhile, had begun forming a tentative bond with the water element foal. He spent hours crouched near the creek, watching it splash, learning subtle gestures and patterns, feeling a strange resonance in his chest as if he could sense its moods. Sarah observed him silently, her heart both heavy and proud. Her son, who had once spoken of leaving the mountains to escape its quiet solitude, was beginning to understand something intangible: connection, responsibility, empathy. As they spoke with Maggie, Jack Mason's presence loomed ever closer, unseen but sensed. He had been circling the property, setting crude traps, and marking the terrain with symbols only he understood. He did not yet know the full extent of the Foals' abilities, but he could see their unusual behaviors, the glow in their eyes, the unusual effects on the environment. Greed had sharpened his senses. He imagined the wealth, the fame, the leverage he could gain from exploiting such creatures, and he would not be denied. Back in the valley, the Foals tested their newfound environment. Fire and wind danced in small arcs. Frost and water mingled in delicate displays, and even the shadow foal crept along the edges, testing boundaries. Sarah and Ethan observed, noting each reaction, recording gestures and subtle signs of elemental control. They realized quickly that leaving the Foals unsupervised, even briefly, was a risk. The forest itself seemed attuned to them. Twigs would snap underfoot, leaves would rustle in warning, and small animals would scatter in strange patterns. The mountain was alive in response to the Foals' awakening. Ethan whispered to Sarah, "Mom, they're communicating, aren't they? Not with words, but somehow." "They know we're here to help," Sarah nodded, though the truth frightened her. "Yes, but they also know when someone means harm. Jack Mason, he's a real danger. We can't underestimate him." Maggie returned their attention to practical matters. "You must teach them restraint. Their powers are linked to their emotions. Fire reacts to anger. Water responds to sorrow. Wind moves with restlessness. If they are frightened or provoked, the consequences could be severe, and remember, they are 12 separate forces. Each one must be nurtured and guided individually, but in harmony with the others." The lessons began at once. Sarah and Ethan spent the next hours learning the subtle ways to interact with each foal. They discovered that one small misstep could result in accidental fires, sudden gusts, or freezing frost. The foals tested them, pulling pranks, darting unexpectedly, or simply ignoring commands. But gradually bonds formed. Ethan learned to mirror the waterfoal's movements, anticipating its gestures. Sarah learned to sense the fiery temper of another, redirecting energy with gentle words and calming touch. Meanwhile, Jack Mason did not wait. He moved silently through the outer edges of the forest, a shadow among shadows, watching for signs of vulnerability. He placed snares and marked trees to guide him back, noting the patterns of movement, the timing of feeding and play. His greed sharpened his cunning, his mind already planning how he would strike when the moment was right. As dusk fell, the hidden valley glowed softly. The fire element foal's eyes caught the fading sunlight, casting tiny sparks that hovered briefly before fading. Frost patterns glimmered on stones as the frosted foal moved. The water element foal shimmered with reflected light, and the wind element foal's mane rippled even without a breeze. Shadow moved silently among them, observing with an intelligence that seemed almost human. Sarah and Ethan sat quietly, exhausted yet exhilarated. They had glimpsed a truth deeper than any legend, and it had changed them both. The mountain, the foals, and the secrets they guarded had demanded their attention, courage, and care. And as they sat together side by side, the first stars appearing over the ridges, they knew that their lives and the lives of the foals would never be ordinary again. But even in that quiet moment, the undercurrent of threat remained. Somewhere beyond the tree line, Jack Mason watched. The mountain hummed with tension. The foals stirred, aware of the watcher, and Sarah felt the sharp edge of fear mix with determination. They were not only learning to live with the magic, they were preparing for the storm that would inevitably come. And in the shadows, the mountain whispered, balance must be preserved, or all would suffer. The morning fog clung to the valley like a living thing, curling around the trunks of pines and settling over the mossy floor. Sarah had awoken before sunrise, her mind restless with worry. The previous day's lessons with Maggie and the Foals had left her with a lingering unease. The more she learned, the more she realized how fragile their situation was. 12 elemental guardians, each unique and powerful, were hidden here in the Appalachian wilderness, and with power came risk. Ethan appeared behind her, rubbing his eyes and yawning. "Morning, Mom," he said, though his tone carried a nervous edge. He too had sensed the subtle vibrations in the forest, the low hum that seemed to originate from the Foals. "Did you hear that? It felt different last night. Like something was watching." Sarah nodded. "I felt it too. Stay close, Ethan. Today we practice more control exercises with them. But keep your eyes open for intruders. Jack Mason doesn't give up easily." They moved carefully through the clearing toward the Foals. The wind element foal was already in motion, tracing erratic patterns in the air, sending a gentle current that rustled leaves. The fire foal stomped impatiently near a boulder, tiny sparks flicking from its hooves and igniting scattered leaves. Sarah inhaled sharply, her pulse quickening. Every foal's power had a personality now, a temperament that could be beautiful or disastrous if mishandled. Ethan knelt beside the waterfoal. Its eyes were wide, reflecting the grey light of the fog, and its movements rippled across the creek in intricate, mesmerizing arcs. Hey there," Ethan whispered, extending a tentative hand. The foal nudged him gently, splashing droplets that shimmered with faint bioluminescence. Ethan laughed softly, the sound almost breaking the tension of the morning. But not all was calm. A snapping twig echoed in the fog, sharp and deliberate. Sarah stiffened, scanning the mist for movement. "Someone's here," she murmured. Her voice was low, cautious, as if speaking louder might alert the unseen intruder. Jack Mason emerged from the fog, crouched low and moving with practiced stealth. He carried a coil of rope and a crude net, his eyes scanning the Foals with an expression equal parts greed and calculation. The fire element foal's sparks caught the edge of his vision, and he licked his lips. "Jackpot," he muttered under his breath. Ignoring the tension rising in the damp morning air, Sarah spotted him just as he stepped over a fallen log. The shadow foal stiffened, ears pricking, and slithered between the trees silently, observing him. It moved almost like a predator coiled for action. Sarah's heart lurched. "Ethan, stay with the waterfoal, now," she commanded. Ethan obeyed, scooping up the foal in his arms and backing towards Sarah. The other foals reacted immediately. Fire stomped furiously, sending a spray of sparks into the fog. Wind whipped up, bending tree branches and scattering leaves. Frost spread across patches of ground as the ice element foal braced itself. Each movement was synchronized, instinctual, as if they understood danger on a level beyond words. Jack paused, noticing the chaotic response. "What in the—" He froze as a small gust of wind pushed him back, scattering loose twigs and leaves like a warning. Then fire licked at his boots, just enough to scorch his leather. His eyes widened. He was unprepared for this. The foal's powers were stronger than he had imagined. Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm, cutting through the tension. "Jack Mason! Leave now, or you will regret it." He laughed, harsh and bitter. "You think your little pets can stop me? I've been hunting all my life. This is just another prize." The windfowl surged, lifting a swirl of leaves that coalesced into a twisting barrier between Mason and the Bennetts. Sarah and Ethan ducked behind a boulder as fire flared across the clearing, controlled but wild, sparks dancing dangerously close to the forest floor. The shadow foal slinked silently toward Mason, eyes glowing with dark intensity, its presence unnerving him. Ethan's hands trembled as he watched. "Mom, they're fighting back." His voice barely carried over the crackle of fire and the hiss of frost forming on leaves. He was fascinated, terrified, but also enthralled. The foals were more than magical. They were alive with intelligence, a force of nature manifesting before his eyes. Sarah gritted her teeth, her mind calculating every angle. Ethan, use what Maggie taught us. Show them you're calm. Command, don't threaten. They'll follow your lead. Ethan nodded, placing the waterfowl down gently. He raised his hands slowly, feeling the foal's pulse through him, sensing the rhythm of its elemental energy. Easy. We're not here to hurt anyone, he murmured. The foal responded, rippling water toward fire and wind, tempering their bursts into controlled arcs. Mason cursed under his breath, realizing his traps and nets were useless against creatures that moved with instinctive intelligence and elemental mastery. He lunged forward anyway, hoping to grab the fire foal, but a sudden gust of wind, amplified by the wind element foal, threw him backward into a shallow ditch. Sparks from the fire foal landed near his sleeve, startling him. He scrambled, snarling, but the shadow foal blocked his path, moving silently yet menacingly, its presence alone sending a shiver down his spine. Sarah advanced carefully, staff in hand, guiding the foals without startling them. "Jack, leave now before it gets worse for you." He glared at her, breathing hard. "You don't understand what I can do." "What I'll do." Ethan stepped beside his mother, finding courage in the foal's energy. "Jack Mason, stop! You're out of your depth. You don't know what they are." For a moment, time seemed suspended. Mason's gaze flicked to each foal in turn. The frost foal had extended icy tendrils across the ground, forming a delicate lattice that limited his movements. The light foal emitted a faint glow, illuminating the fog with ethereal brilliance, revealing every attempt at stealth and aggression. The foals were coordinated, instinctively defensive, yet under the guidance of Sarah and Ethan, restrained from unnecessary harm. Mason faltered, panic rising as he realized brute force was useless. The elemental guardians were alive, intelligent, and bound by a subtle code of protection, not mindless obedience. Sweat rolled down his temple. This isn't possible," he muttered. Sarah tightened her stance, her voice firm but calm. "It's very possible, Jack, and it's real. If you come any closer, you'll be hurt, and you'll have no one to blame but yourself." He hesitated, weighing his options, but greed and desperation drove him forward. In that moment, the wind foal unleashed a controlled surge of air, knocking Mason off balance. The fire foal sent a harmless but startling spray of sparks that scattered his rope and net. Shadow and Frost worked in unison, creating an invisible barrier that funneled him back toward the forest edge. Ethan's voice rose with newfound confidence. "Sarah, let's guide them. Use the energy of the foals together." Together, mother and son focused on the foals, their calm resolve amplifying the creature's control. Each foal responded, element interacting with element, forming a mesmerizing display of coordinated power. Fire and wind danced in arcs of sparks and movement. Water and frost intertwined, neutralizing hazardous effects. Shadow and light created illusions that disoriented Mason without causing injury. Finally, Mason stumbled back into the denser forest, catching himself on a tree trunk. He glared back at the clearing, realizing the futility of his attempt. "This isn't over," he shouted, retreating. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her body trembling with adrenaline. Ethan collapsed beside her, waterfall nuzzling his cheek. They did it," he whispered. "They actually protected us." "They are not pets," Sarah said quietly, gazing at each foal. "They are guardians, and we are only beginning to understand what that means." As the fog lifted, revealing the morning sun glinting off dew-soaked leaves, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle firmly on her shoulders. The foals were alive, powerful, and unpredictable. They had tested Mason, and by extension, humanity, but the encounter also confirmed their intelligence and moral instincts. Maggie's earlier words echoed in Sarah's mind. They respond to the intentions of those around them. If approached with care, with respect, they will flourish. Today, they had responded not to threat, but to trust. And yet the danger had not vanished. Jack Mason would return, more determined, and the foal's powers would continue to attract attention. Ethan finally spoke, voice tinged with awe and respect. "Mom, they're incredible. I can feel their emotions, their awareness. It's like they're part of the mountain itself. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sarah nodded, placing a hand on his shoulder. Yes, Ethan, and that is why we must protect them. Not just from Mason, but from anyone who would exploit or misunderstand them. Our job is only beginning. The Foals, sensing calm from their human guardians, gathered around Sarah and Ethan. Fire flickered softly without scorching. Wind rippled gently. Water shimmered in the creek. Frost sparkled harmlessly. Each element contained, balanced, and in harmony. Even Shadow Foal, usually distant and cautious, leaned in slightly, eyes reflecting trust for the first time. Sarah surveyed the valley. This was no longer simply a farm in the Appalachian Mountains. This was a sanctuary, a nexus of power, a place where legends walked in the form of 12 extraordinary creatures. And as she gazed at the rising sun, glinting off their elemental auras, she understood the truth. To protect them, to guide them, and to coexist with them would require everything she had: courage, wisdom, and a heart open to the extraordinary. Ethan smiled faintly, his skepticism replaced with a quiet reverence. "Mom, we're in this together, all of us." Sarah returned the smile, though it was tempered with the gravity of what lay ahead. "Yes, Ethan, together, and whatever comes next, we face it as a family. And as guardians of these foals." From the distant tree line, a shadow moved, Jack Mason silently observing, plotting his next move. He was defeated for now, but the fire of greed burned in him still, and the foals, sensing the lingering threat, gathered instinctively around Sarah and Ethan. They were no longer just magical creatures. They were sentinels, living embodiments of the mountain's will. And the coming days would test them all in ways none could yet foresee. The fog had receded entirely by mid-morning, leaving the valley bathed in soft golden sunlight. Sarah and Ethan moved through the clearing carefully, checking on the foals. Fire stomped contentedly near a scorched patch of earth, now cooling to blackened soil. Wind twirled playfully around the taller pines, brushing against Sarah's hair. Shadow Foal remained close, as if guarding them, while frost traced delicate patterns along rocks and roots. Waterfowl had returned to the creek, sending gentle ripples along its surface, as though the chaos of the previous day were nothing more than a dream. Yet, despite the apparent calm, Sarah felt a prickling unease. The confrontation with Jack Mason had been a warning. The foal's powers could not remain hidden forever. Even now, as she studied the forest edges, she sensed the faint rustle of movement, a whisper of boots over leaves, too measured to be random. Before she could act, a voice rang out across the clearing, calm but carrying an unmistakable authority. "That's quite a display you've orchestrated here." Sarah spun around. A man stood at the edge of the tree line, tall and lean, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. His presence was unsettling, yet not hostile. He was impeccably dressed for the woods, boots, fitted jacket, and a satchel slung over his shoulder, but there was an air of mystery about him, as if he belonged simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. "I should ask who you are," Sarah called, her hand resting instinctively on a nearby branch, ready to defend if needed. Ethan stepped closer to her side, foals instinctively tightening their circle around them. "I'm Alex Winters," the man said smoothly, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I study magical anomalies, and it seems I've stumbled upon one of the most intriguing manifestations I've ever encountered." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "Magical anomalies? You expect me to believe there's someone wandering the Appalachian Mountains studying—" "What exactly?" Alex's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. "Not just wandering, searching, and yes, these—" He gestured toward the foals, who had now noticed his presence, ears pricking and tails swishing. Fire flickered nervously, wind shifted, and Shadow Foal's gaze narrowed. "These creatures are extraordinary. I've tracked phenomena like them before, but never in such concentration, never so well-formed." Ethan stepped forward, his curiosity piqued despite his mother's tension. "You know about them?" he asked, voice tentative. "About the foals?" Alex's eyes softened slightly as he studied Ethan. "I know enough to recognize that these aren't ordinary animals. Elemental energy, intelligent awareness. Guardians, perhaps. And you, young man, have a rare connection with them." Sarah tightened her jaw, instinctively protective. "And what does that mean? Are you here to help or to exploit them?" Alex tilted his head, studying her with an almost clinical calm. "That depends on you. On whether you trust me, or whether you force me to act cautiously. My interest is knowledge, yes, but I'm not here to harm them. Not unless you make that impossible." Ethan glanced at his mother, then at Alex. "Mom, he seems, I don't know, different. He doesn't look like Jack Mason." Sarah's eyes didn't leave Alex. "Difference isn't trust. Ethan, remember that." Before the conversation could continue, a sudden commotion erupted near the edge of the clearing. The frost foal had bolted, dashing toward the northern ridge, ears pinned. Fire flared in protest, wind whistled urgently, and Shadow Foal darted into the underbrush. Sarah cursed under her breath. "They sense something," she said, already moving toward the disturbance. Alex followed swiftly, surprisingly agile for someone carrying a satchel. "Elemental manifestations often react before humans perceive danger," he said, his voice low. "It's instinct. I can help if you allow me." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, but stay out of my way if you want to stay unharmed." The three humans reached the ridge where the frost foal had disappeared. The ground here was uneven, slick with morning dew, and Sarah had to step carefully over roots and rocks. Ethan stayed close, sensing the foal's energy. "It's scared," he whispered. "Something's wrong." Suddenly, the foal leapt into a narrow canyon, its form nearly invisible against the shadows. Sarah stopped at the edge, peering down. The frost had left delicate patterns along the stone walls, as if tracing a path. "It's hiding," she murmured. "Or it's trying to lead us somewhere." Alex knelt beside her, examining the markings. "These aren't random. Look, energy signatures, elemental traces. The foal isn't just reacting, it's communicating." Ethan's eyes widened. "Communicating with us?" "Not quite," Alex said. "With the mountain. And it's asking for guidance. Follow carefully." They descended into the canyon, the air growing colder and heavier. Frost crystals clung to the rocks, reflecting shafts of sunlight in fractured patterns. The canyon twisted and turned, narrowing at points, but the trail of elemental signs guided them deeper. Occasionally, they glimpsed the foal vanishing before they could reach it, then reappearing farther ahead. Finally, the canyon opened into a hidden grove, a natural amphitheater of stone and ancient trees. And there at its center stood the fire foal, water foal, and shadow foal, forming a tense triad of elemental energy. The air shimmered with their combined presence, faint currents of wind, flickers of fire, and shadows stretching unnaturally across the rocks. Sarah's heart pounded. "What's happening?" she asked, voice hushed. Alex studied the scene intently. "They're synchronizing, responding to a disturbance in the mountain's natural flow. Something or someone is interfering." The ground trembled slightly. Sarah's eyes widened. "Jack Mason?" Alex shook his head. "Not yet. This is environmental. The mountain itself is reacting. Elemental guardians often become erratic when the balance is disrupted by human greed, deforestation, or even minor intrusions. Mason will complicate things, but this isn't him yet." The foals began moving in a coordinated circle, elemental energy radiating outward. Fire flared, wind whipped, water rippled, frost shimmered, and Shadow Foal's aura darkened, curling around the grove like a living cloak. Ethan instinctively stepped forward, hands outstretched. "Easy. It's okay. We're here to help." The Shadow Foal's eyes locked onto Ethan. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, it relaxed slightly, its dark aura shrinking just enough to allow human proximity. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. Alex's voice broke the silence. "This is delicate. Their power is heightened. Any sudden movements or aggressive intentions could trigger a cascade." Sarah swallowed, glancing at the foals. "Then we stay calm. We follow their lead. We trust them." The trio spent the next hour carefully interacting with the foals, guiding their elemental energies into controlled flows. Fire calmed to gentle sparks, wind to playful breezes, water to a smooth ripple across the pond that had formed in the grove, and frost to delicate, harmless patterns on the rocks. Shadow Foal lingered nearby, observing, tense but no longer threatening. Ethan, for the first time, truly connected with the foals. He reached out to the firefall, letting its warmth brush against his palms. "It's like they feel everything," he whispered. "Like they know what we mean." Sarah nodded, watching him carefully. "Yes, and that's why they need guidance. They can do amazing things, but without restraint they can also cause harm." Alex stepped closer, observing. "Exactly. That's why I'm here. You understand their needs, but not fully. I can teach you to channel their energy, safely, responsibly." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "And what do you want in return?" Alex's smile was faint, almost apologetic. "Nothing that jeopardizes them. Only to document, to understand, and to ensure that this sanctuary remains protected. I'm not their master, only a guide when necessary." Before Sarah could respond, a rustling sounded from the forest edge. Jack Mason stepped into the clearing, eyes wide with disbelief and greed. Well, he sneered. "Looks like you've got a whole circus out here." "Elemental horses, eh? Perfect for selling." Or worse, the foals reacted instantly. Fire stomped angrily, sparks scattering near Mason's boots. Wind surged in a wall, blowing leaves into his face. Water rose in a small surge to trip him. Frost formed slick patches that slowed his advance. And Shadow Foal's dark aura extended menacingly, coiling around the grove's perimeter. Sarah stepped forward, staff in hand. "Jack Mason! Leave now!" Mason laughed, shaking his head. "You think a few animals can stop me? This is just the beginning, lady. And I'll be back, with or without help." Alex's voice cut through the tension. "Careful, Mason. You underestimate what these creatures are capable of, and what happens when humans try to dominate forces they cannot comprehend." Mason hesitated. The power radiating from the foals was undeniable, yet he was stubborn and desperate. With a final snarl, he retreated, vowing silently to return. Sarah exhaled slowly, glancing at Ethan, who was wide-eyed but resolute. "This is only the beginning," she murmured. "We must train them, guide them, and protect them. And if Mason returns—" Alex placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Then we will face him together. But remember, the foals are not weapons. They are guardians. Respect that, and they will respond in kind." As the sun climbed higher, illuminating the hidden grove with warm light, Sarah, Ethan, and Alex began the first of many lessons, teaching the foals to focus their powers, to harmonize with the mountain, and to trust their human allies. Each foal responded differently, testing patience, empathy, and understanding. Fire flared impatiently, frost lingered in cautious patterns, water rippled with emotion, wind swirled playfully, and Shadow Foal observed, a learning to modulate its intensity. For Sarah and Ethan, this was more than training, it was a revelation. The foals were not simply magical creatures to be hidden. They were living extensions of the mountain itself, conscious, aware, and capable of teaching as much as they could be guided. And in Alex they had found a mentor of sorts, though his past and motives remained enigmatic. As evening approached, the hidden grove shimmered in hues of gold and shadow, the foals resting yet alert, the humans exhausted but enlightened. Sarah looked at Ethan and whispered, "Tomorrow we begin the real work, guiding them, understanding them, and preparing for Mason or anyone else who might threaten this sanctuary." Ethan nodded solemnly. "I'm ready, Mom, whatever it takes." And in the shadows of the forest, eyes glinting with greed and calculation, Jack Mason watched, waiting for his opportunity, unaware that the mountain itself had begun to fight back, and that the guardians within it were far stronger than he imagined. The following morning, a gentle mist curled around the valley, clinging to trees and the undergrowth, as though reluctant to leave the mountain's embrace. Sarah awoke early, the first rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains of her small cabin. She rose quietly, careful not to wake Ethan, and moved to the barn to check on the foals. The air was crisp and carried the faint scent of damp earth, a reminder that even magic followed the rhythms of nature. Inside the barn, the foals stirred, each exhibiting its distinct elemental energy. Firefowl pawed at the floor, sending small sparks dancing along the hay. Frostfowl breathed softly, trailing a mist that clung to the rafters, while Waterfowl dipped its hooves in a bucket, causing ripples that reflected the rising sun. Shadowfowl lingered in the far corner, its dark aura quivering with subtle motion, and the remaining foals, wind, light, growth, memory, dream, fear, and joy, moved with grace, revealing hints of their powers in small, almost playful ways. Sarah knelt beside Ethan, who had already joined her, captivated by the spectacle. "Mom," he whispered, "they're more alive than ever. I can feel them. Like they're thinking." Sarah nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "They are thinking, Ethan, and feeling. That's why we need to be careful. Every action we take affects them and the mountain." Before they could intervene, Alex appeared at the barn entrance, his presence almost ethereal in the soft morning light. "Good morning," he said, voice calm yet firm. "I trust the night was uneventful?" Sarah shook her head slightly, except for the usual temperamental displays. Shadowfowl disappeared for a while, but it returned before dawn. "Still, I don't trust that silence. Something is stirring deeper in the mountain." Alex nodded, his eyes narrowing. "Exactly what I suspected. The foals' powers are interconnected with the mountain's energy. Every fluctuation in their behavior reflects shifts in the land itself. And these shifts are intensifying." Ethan's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "So the foals can control the mountain?" "Not control," Alex corrected gently. "They harmonize with it. Influence it, yes, but only when guided. When left unchecked, their powers can become chaotic, potentially destructive. This is why your connection, Sarah, and your guidance, Ethan, are crucial." Sarah crossed her arms, her mind racing. "So we're not just dealing with Jack Mason trying to steal them. We're dealing with the mountain itself reacting to—" "What exactly?" Alex paused, studying the foals. Firefowl nudged a beam, sending sparks across the floor, while Waterfowl splashed gently. "Human activity, greed, disturbances in the ecosystem, even subtle intrusions. Chainsaws, trail construction, overfishing streams can ripple through the energy. The foals are reacting to imbalances, attempting to correct what humans have disrupted." Ethan's jaw dropped. "They're like guardians." Alex smiled faintly. "Yes, guardians born from the mountain's ancient magic, but they are also young, learning. And just as humans can make mistakes, so can they, especially when emotions run high." Sarah exhaled, absorbing the weight of his words. "Then we have to teach them restraint, responsibility. They're powerful. Oh, too powerful to be left unchecked." Alex stepped closer, reaching into his satchel and withdrawing a small, intricately carved wooden staff. "This can help. It channels energy, focuses elemental power, but it's only effective if the foals trust you, and each other." Ethan's eyes widened. "You mean they'll respond to us if we show them the right way?" "Yes," Alex said, "but each foal requires different methods. Firefowl responds to confidence and courage, Waterfowl to empathy, Frost to patience. Shadowfowl is more complex. Fear, darkness, memory, it will reflect your own inner balance. And the rest each have their unique triggers. Joy responds to happiness, growth to nurture, wind to freedom, dream to imagination, and memory. Well, memory is tied to experience. It reflects what you've seen, what you've felt, what you've learned." Sarah's stomach tightened. "So it's not just about teaching them?" "We have to teach ourselves first." Alex's gaze met hers. "Precisely. And time is limited. Jack Mason will not wait, and the mountain's imbalances will continue to escalate." Ethan shifted, looking at the foals, then back at his mother. "Mom, I think I can do it. I can connect with them, help guide them. Like I did with Waterfowl yesterday." Sarah studied her son, pride mingled with concern. "I know you can, Ethan, but you must stay focused. They respond to intent, to clarity of mind. If your emotions sway too far, anger, fear, impatience, It could trigger chaos. He nodded solemnly. I understand. The morning passed as they began their first structured interaction with the foals. Their foal was restless, pacing and sparking, but Sarah approached with calm authority. It's okay, she murmured, kneeling slightly. I am not afraid. I will not harm you. Show me what you wish to show safely. Firefoal's eyes glowed brighter, sparks leaping higher, yet gradually the flares diminished as Sarah's patience held. Ethan encouraged Waterfoal to move through controlled ripples in the barn's water trough, while Alex guided Shadowfoal through breathing exercises that focused on containment of its darkness. Hours passed, the foals learning to synchronize their energies in small ways. Windfoal lifted leaves into gentle spirals. Frostfoal patterned delicate designs across the floor, and Joyfoal bounded playfully, spreading warmth that lightened the atmosphere. Shadowfoal remained cautious, its darkness ebbing and flowing like a tide, but gradually it began to mirror the calm focus of Alex and Ethan. During a brief pause, Alex leaned against a post, studying them. Notice something? He asked. Sarah frowned. What? The foals are not independent here. They respond to each other as well as us. Their abilities are interconnected. Fire's sparks can ignite Frost's energy if uncontrolled. Wind can amplify water's currents. Shadow can influence fear across the group. Harmony isn't just teaching them individually, it's teaching them collectively. Ethan looked around at the foals. So, they're like a team? Alex nodded. Exactly. And just like any team, they need guidance, boundaries, and trust. If one goes astray, it could affect all the others, and potentially the valley itself. Sarah bit her lip. Then our task isn't just protection. It's draining, leadership, guardianship on a scale I didn't anticipate. Alex's gaze softened. Yes, but remember, you are not alone. They trust you. You have each other. And soon, they will trust the mountain's balance enough to self-regulate, if you can guide them there. The afternoon brought a subtle shift. As the foals rested in a sun-dappled clearing near the creek, Ethan noticed Waterfoal glimmering in unusual patterns. Mom, look! It's showing me something. Sarah joined him, kneeling beside the foal. Patterns of water shimmered above its hooves, forming fleeting images. Flashes of trees uprooted, smoke curling into the sky, humans arguing near construction, a faint trace of Jack Mason lurking. Ethan gasped. It's memories? Like visions? Alex stepped closer, nodding. Memoryfoal reflects the past, the effects of human action on the land. It can guide you, show what needs attention, but it can also overwhelm if you're not prepared. Sarah placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Then we need to learn to interpret, understand, and respond responsibly. Not just react, always respond with care. Ethan nodded, studying the visions, feeling a connection he hadn't known he possessed. Firefoal flicked a tongue of flame across a nearby log. Windfoal raised leaves into spirals, and Shadowfoal's darkness pooled around them, protective yet watchful. Hours later, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Sarah, Ethan, and Alex returned to the barn. The foals settled, their powers subdued but lingering in faint traces across the ground. Fire glowed dimly, wind left a gentle current, water rippled faintly, frost shimmered, and Shadowfoal's aura curled protectively. Sarah exhaled, exhaustion and relief mingling. It's a lot, she murmured. Alex smiled faintly. Yes, but this is the beginning. You've seen the potential, both for creation and destruction. You've seen their intelligence, their interdependence, and their responsiveness. And you've begun to understand the balance required to maintain it. Ethan leaned against her side. I think we can do it. We can help them. Sarah looked at him, pride shining in her eyes. We will, together. As night fell over the Appalachian mountains, the foals rested under the gentle glow of moonlight, their powers sleeping lightly, yet ready. And in the shadows beyond the valley, Jack Mason's eyes glinted with greed, already scheming his next attempt, unaware that the foals were learning, adapting, and preparing to face any threat that dared enter their sanctuary. The fog rolled in thick over the Appalachian Valley, a low, creeping mist that made the forest trails almost unrecognizable. The morning had begun quietly, with sunlight faintly piercing the grey haze, but Sarah sensed unease in the air before her eyes could confirm it. She had barely finished her morning chores when the first signs appeared: broken twigs, disturbed underbrush, and a faint metallic scent carried by the wind. Jack Mason. Ethan stood behind her, peering into the grey veil. "Mom, he's here," he whispered, a mix of fear and determination in his voice. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. "Stay calm, Ethan. Remember everything we practiced. The Foals can help, but we must be precise. No rash moves." They moved quietly toward the barn. The Foals were already restless, their elemental energy tingling in response to the intruder. Firefowl flicked sparks nervously along the floorboards. Waterfoal's mane rippled as if stirred by an unseen current, and Shadowfoal's aura grew dense and shifting, almost tangible. From the edge of the forest, Jack Mason and a new accomplice, a wiry man with keen eyes and quick hands, slipped closer. They had studied Sarah's routines, noting the foal's patterns and her reliance on the barn as a sanctuary. Tonight, they planned to strike under cover of fog and pretense of silence. "Keep your distance," Sarah whispered to Ethan. She crouched slightly, scanning the area. "We guide, we don't chase. We control, not react. Understand?" Ethan nodded. "I understand." Jack Mason approached the barn with a mix of stealth and arrogance, carrying a lasso meant for capturing the foals. He paused, noticing the subtle movements in the mist. "Looks quiet." "Too quiet," he muttered to his accomplice. "The old lady must be asleep. Let's grab one and get out before she notices." Inside, the foals stirred, sensing danger. Firefoal's eyes glowed with intensity, sending sparks into the air, warning of imminent threat. Frostfoal's breath crystallized in patterns, and Waterfoal's ripples extended across the barn floor, forming a faint protective barrier. Shadowfoal lingered at the back, its dark aura curling around the edges of the barn, waiting. Sarah whispered to Alex, who had arrived at her side silently. "They're testing the perimeter. We need to anticipate, not react." Alex nodded, eyes scanning the fog. "We'll use their instincts. Fire and wind will act as distractions. Water can guide. Shadow and fear will guard our flanks." Ethan stepped forward slightly, calling softly to the foals. "Listen to me. Stay calm. Follow my lead. We protect each other." From the forest edge, Jack Mason tossed the lasso toward the foals. It sailed through the air with precision, aiming for Waterfoal, whose ripples diverted it harmlessly to the ground. Mason cursed under his breath, realizing the foals were anticipating his every move. Suddenly, Firefoal leaped forward, sparks igniting along the dry leaves outside the barn, drawing attention. Windfoal followed, creating a small vortex that whipped fog and debris into Mason's eyes, temporarily blinding him. Mason's accomplice tried to grab a foal from behind, but Shadowfoal's darkness surged outward, creating illusions of multiple forms, confusing and disorienting them. "Now!" Alex shouted. Sarah and Ethan moved in perfect synchronization, guiding the foals to strategic positions. Waterfoal's currents flowed toward Mason, creating an invisible barrier. Firefoal shot brief flames that forced the intruders backward, careful not to harm. Frostfoal's icy breath chilled the ground, slowing their movements, and Windfoal's spiraling leaves obscured visibility further. Mason roared in frustration. "Curse those things! Grab one!" Ethan realized the opportunity. Whispering to Shadowfoal, he extended his hands in a calming gesture. The darkness pulsed briefly, then coalesced around Mason, creating an illusion of walls and pits. Mason stumbled, panicked by visions of falling cliffs and erupting fires that weren't real, but felt terrifyingly tangible. Sarah, seeing Mason off balance, acted. She grabbed a rope from the barn and swung it, aiming to ensnare him without direct violence. The foals responded instinctively. Fire flared at precise angles to create a controlled barrier. Waterfoal's ripples adjusted the rope's trajectory, and Windfoal stabilized the loop mid-air. The rope looped around Mason's torso, pinning him to the ground without harm. Enough. Sarah commanded, standing tall amidst the magical display. "You will leave now, or face consequences you cannot imagine." Mason struggled, his eyes wild with rage and disbelief. You can't— these aren't normal animals." "No," Ethan said quietly, stepping beside Sarah. "They aren't, and they won't be taken from this mountain. Not by you, not by anyone." Mason's accomplice finally broke under the pressure of Shadow Foals' illusions and the other elemental defenses. He fled into the fog, tripping and stumbling, leaving Mason alone, caught but not harmed. Alex approached, examining the Foals' arrangement. They responded remarkably. Coordinated instinct, empathy, and intelligence. They're learning, adapting to threat in real time. Sarah knelt, checking on Waterfoal, who shimmered faintly from exertion. "They're amazing," she murmured. "But it's exhausting. For all of us." Ethan knelt beside her, looking at Shadow Foal, who now rested calmly, its aura softened. "Mom, I think they trust us more than ever. They know we're on their side." Alex nodded. "Trust is the foundation. But this was only a test. Mason won't stop. He'll regroup. And the mountain's reaction to the disturbance is just beginning. You've seen how quickly things can escalate." Sarah stood, brushing hay from her hands. "Then we prepare. We train them, guide them, and anticipate every move he might make next. And we protect the mountain at all costs." The day continued with focused exercises. Firefoal learned to release energy in controlled bursts. Waterfoal refined its currents. Windfoal practiced steering leaves and debris precisely. Frostfoal honed the ability to chill without endangering nearby life. Shadowfoal explored illusions under Ethan's guidance. Joy and Growthfoals responded positively to encouragement. Memoryfoal reflected the lessons they had practiced. And Dreamfoal began exhibiting subtle foresight, glimpses of possible outcomes based on human and magical interactions. As dusk settled, Sarah, Ethan, and Alex observed from the hill above the barn. The foals moved with harmony, their powers balanced yet individually distinct, responding to invisible threads of command, empathy, and intuition. The mountain itself seemed calmer, as though acknowledging the careful stewardship of its magical guardians. But in the shadows of the distant forest, Mason watched. His eyes glinted with renewed determination, his mind racing with schemes for his next attempt. He underestimated the foals, underestimated the Bennetts, and underestimated the mountain itself. The tension was far from resolved. Sarah turned to Ethan, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Today was dangerous, but it taught us something. They can defend themselves, but we are still their leaders. We guide, we protect, we anticipate. That's our responsibility." Ethan nodded, glancing at the foals. "I get it now. It's not just about keeping them safe. It's about teaching them, teaching ourselves, how to be part of this mountain." Alex smiled faintly. "And that is the essence of guardianship. Knowledge, empathy, foresight, and courage. Today was a test and you passed. But Mason's interference has shown that the real challenge is only beginning." Night fell, shrouding the valley in silver and shadow. The foals rested in a circle, their elemental energies softly glowing. Fire flickered, water rippled, wind whispered through leaves. Frost shimmered, shadow pulsed, light glowed, joy twinkled, and growth, memory, and dream shimmered subtly. Together they were a living symphony of magic, aware, intelligent, and ready to defend their home. Sarah and Ethan watched over them, exhausted but determined, knowing that the safety of the foals and the mountain depended on their vigilance, understanding, and courage. And beyond the tree line, Jack Mason nursed his bruised ego and simmering rage, plotting the next move that would push the Bennetts and their elemental wards to the limits of endurance. The forest was quiet in the early morning light, yet the stillness carried a weight that pressed against Sarah Bennett's chest. The fog from the previous night had lifted, leaving dew-laden leaves glistening under a hesitant sun. The valley seemed peaceful, almost mundane, but Sarah knew better. The foals' energies were restless, their elemental powers whispering of disturbances far beyond their immediate surroundings. Something within the mountain had shifted, and it was as if the earth itself was trying to communicate with them. Sarah and Ethan moved along the familiar trail that led deeper into the forest. Alex followed closely behind, a weathered satchel slung across his shoulder, filled with the instruments and ancient scrolls he had brought to study magical anomalies. His steps were deliberate, his eyes scanning not only the terrain, but also subtle signs of supernatural activity. "Mom, why do you think the mountain is acting like this?" Ethan asked quietly, his voice betraying both wonder and unease. "It wasn't like this before." Sarah's eyes swept across the forest canopy. "Because, Ethan, the Foals are more than just creatures of magic. They're connected to the mountain itself. And when humans interfere, whether intentionally or not, the balance shifts." Ethan's mind raced back to Jack Mason's intrusion the night before. The lasso, the illusions, and the Foals' coordinated defenses. "You mean the mountain is alive?" Alex smiled faintly. "In a sense, yes. Not alive as you and I are, but responsive. Elemental forces, energy currents, ancient guardians, they've always been part of this land. The Foals are extensions of that energy, created to maintain equilibrium. And when Mason disrupted it, he didn't just threaten the Foals, he threatened the mountain itself." Sarah's heart clenched at that realization. She had always known the Appalachian mountains held secrets, but the depth of those secrets was beginning to overwhelm her. She remembered the stories Maggie had told her as a child, legends of spirits who protected the land, who could grant blessings or unleash fury depending on human behavior. But she had never imagined it could manifest like this. 12 young foals, elemental powers, and now a tangible, almost sentient reaction from the mountain. They reached a clearing where the foals had been allowed to graze and play under supervision. Firefowl flickered sparks along the edges of the grass, while waterfall's ripples traced delicate patterns in the nearby stream. Shadowfowl lingered in the shadows, watching the trio approach, its dark aura pulsing faintly. Ethan knelt to greet Memoryfall, feeling a warm resonance in the connection they shared. Suddenly the ground trembled, faint but unmistakable. Leaves shivered, and the foals paused mid-step, ears twitching. Firefall's sparks flared briefly, Waterfall's stream bubbled erratically, and Shadowfall's darkness deepened. "What was that?" Ethan asked, standing quickly. Alex crouched, examining the soil. "Not just tremors. The mountain is reacting to an imbalance. Something, or someone, is amplifying disturbances." Sarah's mind raced. "You mean Mason?" "Partly," Alex said, "but not just him. Any human greed, exploitation, or even negligence can create ripples. The foals sense it, and the mountain amplifies it." Before they could discuss further, the first signs of disaster appeared. A sudden wind gust tore through the clearing, stirring leaves into chaotic spirals. Frostfoal's breath crystallized violently along the edges of the stream, creating jagged ice spikes. Ethan felt the Memoryfall's pulse, as if it were sending him flashes of the mountain's history. Ancient trees, felled by logging, rivers polluted, lands stripped for profit. Each vision was sharp, vivid, and troubling. Sarah realized immediately that they were witnessing the mountain's reaction firsthand. "We have to calm them," she urged, looking at the foals. "Guide them, control their powers before the imbalance escalates." Ethan stepped forward, placing a hand on Memoryfall's mane. "We can do this together," he whispered. "We've learned, right?" The foals responded, instinctively tuning their powers to the human guardian's guidance. Firefall's sparks became controlled embers, Waterfall's currents smoothed, Windfall spiraled gently rather than violently, Frostfall's breath softened. Shadowfall's illusions dimmed to harmless shapes, and Joyfall pranced along the edges of the clearing, lightening the tension. Growthfall encouraged vines and small plants to rise protectively, creating natural barricades, Alex observed, impressed by their coordination. "They're learning rapidly, but the imbalance is spreading faster than we can manage. We need to understand the root, why the mountain is reacting so strongly, and how Mason's interference is contributing." Sarah nodded. "Then we go deeper." "Show me what you know, Alex." The group moved toward an ancient cave system that Maggie had once mentioned in whispered stories. She had always said it was a sacred site, a place where the elemental guardians of the mountain could commune with the land itself. Few humans had ever ventured inside, and even fewer had returned with clarity about what lay within. As they approached the cave entrance, Foals stirred nervously. Ethan placed a calming hand on its shoulder. "It's okay. We're here together." Inside, the cave was cool, dark, and alive with subtle vibrations. Ancient etchings covered the walls, depicting creatures with flowing manes, swirling winds, cascading waters, erupting flames, and shadowy forms. Alex illuminated the cave with a soft lantern, revealing inscriptions that seemed almost to move when observed. "These markings," Alex explained, tracing the carvings with careful fingers, "tell the story of the mountain's guardians, the Foals. They've existed for centuries, though in cycles. Humans would come and go, often disrupting the balance, and these elemental spirits would awaken to restore equilibrium. Mason is just the latest ripple in a long history of interference." Ethan ran his hand over a depiction of a foal emerging from glowing rock. "So, this isn't the first time the mountain had to fight humans?" "No," Sarah said softly. "But it's the first time in our lifetimes, and now we're part of that story." Alex motioned toward a deep recess within the cave. "This is the heart chamber. It's where the mountain's energy converges. If we can reach it, we can stabilize the Foal's powers temporarily and better understand the disturbances. But it's dangerous. Unchecked elemental energy can be volatile. Any mistake could escalate the imbalance." Sarah glanced at Ethan, seeing the mix of fear and determination in his eyes. "Are you ready?" she asked. He nodded. "With you." The Foals followed, their energy sensing the heart chamber. Foals' glow intensified, light casting flickering patterns across the cave walls. Foals' movements created gentle currents along the floor. Foals' darkness stretched protectively around the group. Each foal seemed to intuitively know their role in the upcoming challenge. As they approached the chamber, the ground trembled violently. Rocks shifted, and the air thickened with elemental energy. Ethan felt a surge in Memory Foal's pulse, as though the mountain were sending a warning. A distant roar echoed through the caverns, reverberating in their bones. Suddenly, Mason appeared at the cave's entrance, his face twisted in obsession and greed. "You think you can control this?" he shouted. "This power belongs to me. I'll take one foal and harness it all." Sarah stepped forward, placing herself between Mason and the foals. "No, Jack. This power belongs to the mountain. You will not touch them," Mason sneered, lasso in hand, moving toward Shadow Foal. But the foals responded instantly. Fire and Frost Foals created a wall of heat and ice. Wind Foal stirred a protective vortex, and Shadow Foal expanded its illusions, making the cavern seem filled with traps, pitfalls, and ghostly figures. Mason hesitated, unsure of what was real. Alex spoke quickly, chanting softly in the old tongue, channeling energy from the cave walls to stabilize the Foals' powers. The chamber hummed with harmonic resonance as the Foals aligned their abilities, amplifying the protective shield around them. Ethan placed his hands on Memory and Dream Foals. He could feel the mountain's pain and its plea for balance. Whispering, he guided the Foals' focus, reminding them of their purpose, to protect, not to attack unnecessarily. Slowly, Mason found himself pinned by the combined force of illusion, elemental barriers, and human resolve. "You underestimate the bond between Guardian and Mountain," Sarah said, her voice firm. "Your greed cannot overpower centuries of harmony." Mason's eyes widened as he realized the futility. With a final glare, he retreated, disappearing into the fog outside, but not without leaving the faintest trace of threat lingering in the valley. The cave fell silent. The Foals' glow dimmed to a calm luminescence. Ethan collapsed onto his knees, exhausted but relieved. Sarah knelt beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "They're incredible," Ethan whispered. "And we're part of this." "Yes," Sarah said, eyes scanning the chamber. "We're stewards now. They're guardians, and the mountain, it trusts us if we remain true to our purpose." Alex stepped forward, smiling faintly. The heart chamber has shown you the mountain's secret. The foals are its extensions. But remember, balance is delicate. The human world will always challenge it. Your vigilance must remain constant. Outside, the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the valley. The foals followed Sarah and Ethan back toward the clearing, their movements calm, measured, and confident. The mountain seemed to exhale, the tremors subsiding, the energy stabilizing. Sarah looked at her son and the foals, a sense of profound responsibility settling on her shoulders. We've learned a lot, Ethan, but this is just the beginning. We have to protect them, guide them, and ourselves. Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of purpose. I understand, Mom. I won't let the mountain down. I won't let them down. The foals pranced around them, elemental energy mingling, creating patterns of light, water, frost, and shadow. Harmony, for now, had been restored. But the lesson was clear. The mountain's secrets were alive, intelligent, and demanding. And human greed would never cease testing them. Sarah, Ethan, and Alex returned to the barn, carrying with them the knowledge that their guardianship was both privilege and burden. The foals slept peacefully, yet their elemental energies hummed softly, reminding them of their purpose. Outside, the valley remained quiet, beautiful, and deceptively calm, a fragile equilibrium maintained by courage, empathy, and trust. And in the distance, hidden among the trees, Mason lingered still, plotting. But the Bennetts, their foals, and the mountain were prepared. The first rays of morning filtered through the dense canopy, scattering dappled light across the Appalachian valley. The forest smelled of damp earth and fresh pine, carrying a serene calm that had been absent in recent days. Sarah Bennett stood at the edge of the clearing, Ethan at her side, watching as the 12 foals grazed peacefully. Their powers, once volatile and untamed, now shimmered subtly around them, gentle whispers of elemental energy woven into the rhythm of the mountain itself. It was a rare moment of tranquility, a brief interlude after weeks of chaos. Firefall flicked its glowing mane lazily, steam curling from nostrils in the crisp morning air. Waterfoal's reflection rippled along the stream bank, creating patterns that danced in the sunlight. Shadowfoal lingered quietly near Sarah, its dark aura calm, almost protective, while Joyfoal pranced ahead, its light energy making the leaves sparkle with an ethereal glow. Each foal seemed attuned to the others, moving in harmony, a microcosm of the balance they were created to maintain. "Mom, it's beautiful," Ethan murmured, kneeling to watch Growthfoal coax vines upward to form a delicate lattice around a small grove. "Everything feels right again." Sarah smiled faintly, though her gaze remained thoughtful. "Beautiful, yes. But it's fragile. We've seen how quickly this balance can tip. Remember what happened with Mason? Even a single act of greed can ripple through the mountain like an earthquake." Ethan nodded solemnly, memories of Jack Mason's desperate lashing attempts at theft still fresh. But in that moment, he also felt the lessons of courage, responsibility, and empathy settle within him. "I understand," he said. "I know we have to stay vigilant." Alex, who had been observing quietly, stepped forward. "The mountain is forgiving in its way. It restores harmony when its guardians act with wisdom and care. But human intervention will always remain a threat. Mason's greed was a test, one the foals passed, and one you passed as well." Sarah ran a hand over Shadowfoal's mane, feeling the subtle pulse of darkness beneath her palm. "They've grown so quickly. Each one has a purpose. We've only just begun to understand it." The group spent the morning observing the foals' interactions. Ethan noted how Memory Foal lingered near the oldest trees, communicating silently with the land, while Dream Foal weaved illusions over the glades, creating spaces of calm and reflection. Lightning Foal arced playful streaks of static across the rocks, while Earth Foal rooted itself in the soil, sensing subtle vibrations beneath the surface. The foals were not just animals, they were living embodiments of the mountain's will, intelligent and intuitive beyond anything the trio had anticipated. As the sun climbed higher, Sarah knew it was time to address the community. Maggie had once warned her, Guardianship was not only about protection from outsiders, but also about fostering understanding. The village needed to respect the mountain's magic, even if they could not fully comprehend it. "Alex," Sarah said quietly, "we need to guide the villagers carefully. They can't know everything, especially Mason's interference, but they need to respect this place. Otherwise, someone else will come looking for the Foals." Alex nodded, thoughtful. "I can help, but discretion is key. The mountain's magic is not meant for human exploitation, and its secrets should remain protected. I can provide knowledge without revealing the full scope of their powers." Ethan, ever curious, tilted his head. "Do you think they'll really understand?" "Most of the village, they think magic is just old stories," Sarah smiled faintly. "That's why we must show them through action, not words. Let them see the balance, the harmony restored. Let them feel the mountain's presence in small, subtle ways." They began with small interventions. Waterfowl subtly redirected a spring to provide fresh water to the village without drawing attention. Growthfowl encouraged trees and plants to flourish along trails, stabilizing erosion and creating natural paths that improved safety without human labor. Lightningfowl cleared deadfalls and hazards silently at night, leaving the village unaware of the source of these miracles. Each action reminded the villagers of the mountain's quiet power without revealing its true guardians. As the days passed, Sarah and Ethan led the foals through carefully monitored exercises. Firefowl practiced controlled warmth to protect against frost, while Frostfowl moderated winter's bite on crops. Shadowfowl guided lost hikers safely, using illusions to shield them from cliffs and steep terrain. Each foal contributed to the community, yet always remained unseen enough to preserve the mountain's secret. Meanwhile, Jack Mason's absence left a tense silence in the valley. Sarah remained alert, knowing greed did not vanish overnight. Yet with Mason gone, there was space for healing. Ethan noticed the subtle change in the foals' demeanor. They no longer tensed at every rustle or shadow, their energy flowing naturally rather than defensively. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks, casting long shadows across the valley, Maggie arrived with a basket of herbs and old scrolls. "Sarah," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "the mountain is pleased. But remember, harmony is a living thing. It must be tended, not taken for granted." Sarah nodded, watching the foals graze in the twilight glow. "We've learned that, Maggie. Every choice, every act of care matters. The foals are part of the mountain, and we are part of their world now." Maggie smiled knowingly. "You've embraced your role fully. The mountain chose well. The foals are not just magical creatures. They are teachers, messengers, and protectors. Your vigilance, your guidance is what allows them to thrive." Alex, standing nearby, added, "And your bond with them is crucial. They respond to empathy, courage, and respect. That is how you maintain balance." As darkness fell, the valley glowed with subtle luminescence. Firefowl's mane flickered gently, Waterfowl's stream shimmered in moonlight, and Shadowfowl's aura softened into a comforting presence around Sarah and Ethan. Even Dreamfowl wove soft illusions across the hills, creating a tapestry of light and shadow that made the valley feel sacred. The night passed peacefully, the foals sleeping in quiet harmony, their elemental powers subdued yet ever present. Sarah lay awake in her cabin, listening to the rustle of trees, the distant call of an owl, and the rhythmic breathing of Ethan beside her. She reflected on the journey, the discovery of the foals, Jack Mason's threats, the chaos of uncontrolled powers, and the eventual understanding of the mountain's secret. Ethan stirred, whispering, "Mom, they're amazing. I never imagined anything like this." Sarah reached out, placing a hand over his. "No, Ethan, amazing isn't the right word. Their responsibility, their trust. They're the mountain itself, and we've been chosen to protect that trust." He nodded, a sense of purpose settling over him. "I understand. I want to help, always." The next morning brought a subtle ceremony of sorts. Sarah, Ethan, and Alex guided the foals to the edge of the forest, where the village could witness small miracles: water flowing where it had been dry, new growth along worn paths, and gusts of wind clearing fallen debris. The villagers murmured in wonder, attributing the events to the mountain's unseen hand rather than to the magical creatures themselves. Respect rather than knowledge had been achieved. Mayor Daniel Cole, cautious yet intrigued, approached Sarah. "I don't know how you're doing it," he admitted, "but something's changed here. People feel safer. The valley seems alive in a good way. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." Carefully, Sarah inclined her head, masking her awareness of the foal's involvement. "We will, Mayor. The mountain provides, and we simply maintain what is already here." Ethan watched, pride swelling within him. Their work as guardians had begun, and the balance, for now, was restored. Firefoal flicked sparks playfully at the mayor's boots, quickly doused, leaving him startled but unharmed. Shadowfoal lingered in the background, a silent protector. Over the next weeks, Sarah and Ethan continued to train and guide the foals. Each foal's unique abilities became tools not for dominance, but for harmony. Lightning Foal energized windmills to provide quiet electricity to the village. Growth Foal encouraged soil fertility. Dream Foal soothed anxious villagers during stormy nights with comforting illusions. And Memory Foal preserved ancient trees by nurturing their roots. The mountain thrived, and so did the bond between humans and magical creatures. One evening, as the valley glowed under a silver moon, Sarah and Ethan sat beside Shadow Foal, its presence calm and reassuring. Alex had prepared a small ritual of gratitude, invoking the mountain's energy to honor its guardians. The foals gathered naturally, forming a circle of elemental harmony. Fire flared softly, water shimmered, wind danced, and earth pulsed gently beneath their hooves. Shadowfoal's darkness enveloped the group like a protective cloak, and Joyfoal pranced in circles, celebrating the restored balance. "Look at them," Sarah whispered to Ethan. "They're happy, and so are we. This is what it means to be guardians." Ethan nodded, watching the interplay of light and shadow, water and fire, growth and dream. "We'll keep it that way. No one will disrupt them again." Alex smiled, his eyes reflecting the luminescence of the foals. "Harmony is maintained not by force, but by understanding and care. You have proven capable. The mountain's secret is safe, for now." Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the valley beneath her feet. The foals, the mountain, and the community had found equilibrium. Even the echoes of Jack Mason's greed seemed distant, muted by the resilience of the land and the guardianship of those who understood its value. As the night deepened, the Bennetts returned to their cabin. The foals settled nearby, elemental energies quiet but ever present. Sarah glanced at Ethan, their eyes meeting in mutual understanding and determination. The journey had been arduous, filled with fear, uncertainty, and moral dilemmas, but they had endured. And as guardians, their role was clear: to protect, guide, and honor the mountain and its magical children. Outside, the valley lay in stillness, a testament to the power of trust, empathy, and respect. And somewhere in the distance, among the shadowed hills, the wind whispered a message of continued vigilance, a reminder that guardianship was not a moment, but a lifelong covenant. For Sarah, Bennett, Ethan, and the 12 foals, harmony had been restored. The days that followed the restoration of the mountain's balance were deceptively calm. The foals thrived, their elemental powers now flowing in quiet harmony, responding effortlessly to the guidance of Sarah, Ethan, and Alex. The village adapted to subtle changes: streams cleaner, crops healthier, winds gentler, but none suspected the true source of these miracles. To them, the mountain was simply protective, a guardian in its own right. Yet tranquility, as Sarah had learned, was often only temporary. Shadows of the past have a way of creeping back when least expected. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Appalachian peaks, casting long golden streaks across the valley, Ethan noticed a disturbance in the foal's behavior. Firefoal's flickers were more erratic than usual. Waterfoal's ripples carried strange echoes, and Shadowfoal lingered tensely, ears twitching toward the tree line. Ethan's pulse quickened. "Something's wrong," he murmured to Sarah. Sarah, ever vigilant, scanned the forest. The air felt heavier, charged with a subtle tension. "I've been expecting this," she said quietly. "Balance is delicate. The mountain always remembers past disruptions. Perhaps Mason's greed was only the first ripple." Alex stepped closer, analyzing the shifting energy around them. "I feel it too. Not only residual fear or anger from Mason, but another presence. Something older, more deliberate. Someone or something is awakening." Ethan swallowed hard. "Do you think it's another human?" Alex shook his head. "I'm not certain. But if it is, it's someone who knows more than Mason ever did. Someone who can exploit the mountain's power with intent. That could be dangerous." Sarah placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Then we need to prepare, but quietly. The foals must remain unharmed, and the villagers unaware." As night fell, the foals began responding to subtle cues, instinctively forming a protective perimeter around the clearing. Fire and lightning foals circled near the outer edges, while earth and growth foals reinforced natural barriers with roots and vines. Shadowfoal's presence extended outward, creating a veil of darkness that masked their movements. Suddenly, a distant howl echoed through the valley. It was neither human nor animal, but a chilling sound that carried both intelligence and intent. The foals stiffened, ears pricked, their elemental energy pulsing nervously. "Here it comes," Alex whispered, his eyes narrowing. "Whatever it is, it's approaching quickly." From the darkness, a figure emerged. A tall man draped in a cloak embroidered with arcane symbols, his eyes glinting with cold calculation. He carried an aura of command, radiating both authority and latent power. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. "Who are you?" she demanded, stepping forward. "This valley is protected. Leave now or face the consequences." The figure chuckled softly, a sound that echoed unnervingly through the trees. "Ah, the Guardians," he said. "I've heard whispers of your success. The foals, the mountain, the harmony you've restored. Impressive, but fragile. All fragile. I intend to see the mountain's true potential." Ethan stepped beside his mother, protective but wary. "You can't control it. You don't understand." "On the contrary," the stranger replied, voice smooth and measured. "I understand more than you can imagine. The foals are mere extensions of power, waiting to be fully realized. And I intend to unlock it." Firefoal stomped, sparks flying, while Waterfoal's currents swirled protectively around the group. Shadowfoal's aura expanded, creating illusions that made the stranger appear surrounded by pitfalls and phantom guardians. Sarah glanced at Alex. "Do we fight him?" Alex shook his head. "Not yet. Observe first. This is someone who knows about the mountain, about the foals, and possibly about ancient magics beyond our comprehension. Understanding him is the first step." The stranger raised a hand, and the air seemed to ripple. The ground trembled beneath their feet, though subtly. Ethan felt a deep resonance from Memory Foal, a warning, a memory of a past disturbance embedded in the mountain itself. "You see," the stranger continued, "the mountain is alive, but it has limits. You've only experienced its surface, its protective instinct. I seek its core, the heart itself. The foals are keys, and I will use them to unlock what has remained dormant for centuries." Sarah tightened her grip on Ethan's hand. "You won't. We will protect them no matter what." The stranger's eyes glinted. "Bold, I admire that. But boldness alone cannot prevent what is inevitable. Your harmony is temporary. Shadows of the past linger waiting. And they've found me." At his words, a low rumble rolled through the valley. The forest seemed to pulse with an ancient energy, older and more formidable than any they had previously encountered. Ethan felt a surge from Dream Foal, visions flashing of the mountain centuries ago, storms that tore apart villages, fires that reshaped forests, and creatures of elemental fury bound to the land, waiting for the right guardians. Firefoal reared, flames flickering in protest, while Waterfoal's stream roiled violently. Shadowfoal's illusions grew dense, forming a protective dome around the Bennets. Lightning Foal arced tension through the air, preparing to strike, and Growth Foal's roots shifted, anchoring them firmly to the earth. Sarah drew a deep breath. "Ethan, focus. Trust them." "They'll follow your guidance," Ethan nodded, closing his eyes. He could feel the mountain's pulse, the subtle flow of energy through the foals. He reached out mentally, connecting with Memory Foal and Dream Foal, drawing on the lessons they had taught him. Harmony was not about power alone. It was about balance, trust, and understanding. The stranger moved forward undeterred. "The mountain will obey, whether you will or not." Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifted. Earthfoal's power surged, sending roots and stones to form barriers that slowed his advance. Shadowfoal's illusions intensified, creating a labyrinth of false passages and phantom guardians. Fire and Frost Foals combined their elements, creating walls of steam that obscured vision, while Wind Foal stirred currents to buffet the intruder. The stranger paused, impressed yet calculating. Ah, clever, but inadequate. He raised a small talisman and the air shimmered. Ethan felt a surge in the foal's energy, a dissonance that threatened to overwhelm them. The mountain groaned, responding to a challenge it had not faced in generations. Sarah realized the danger. "We need to reach the heart chamber. If he accesses it first, he could control everything." Alex nodded. "The path is treacherous, but we must move quickly. The foals will guide us." With careful coordination, they led the foals through hidden passages, tunnels revealed only to those attuned to the mountain's energy. The stranger pursued, tearing through illusions and barriers, his knowledge of elemental magic evident. Yet every step they took seemed to strengthen the foal's connection, the bond between human and guardian deepening with urgency. Finally, they reached the heart chamber, where the energy converged in a brilliant pulsing core. Ethan felt the mountain's will radiating through him, through the foals, through every fiber of his being. Fire, water, earth, wind, frost, shadow, and joy coalesced, forming a harmonic resonance that stabilized the chamber and repelled outside intrusion. The stranger stepped forward, attempting to disrupt the alignment. Lightning Foal arced defensively, while Dream Foal's illusions formed protective shields. Shadow Foal confronted him directly, weaving illusions that trapped him in a maze of reflections. Fire and Frost Foals combined, creating a barrier of extreme temperature shifts, while Water Foal's currents and Growth Foal's roots reinforced the defenses. "You cannot hold this," the stranger hissed, struggling to push through. Ethan, centered and calm, extended his awareness. Balance, not control. Harmony, not greed. At his command, the foals intensified their resonance, connecting directly to the mountain's core. A wave of energy radiated outward, forcing the stranger backward. The heart pulsed, its ancient energy aligning with the foal's abilities and Ethan's intent. The stranger screamed in frustration, unable to penetrate the collective will of guardians and mountain. "Impossible!" Sarah stepped forward, her voice strong and unwavering. "It is not impossible. You underestimate the bond between the mountain, its guardians, and those who respect it. Leave now, and the valley may yet forgive you. Resist, and you will face forces beyond comprehension." The stranger hesitated, sensing the truth of her words. With a final glare, he retreated into the shadows, disappearing as suddenly as he had appeared. The foal's energy subsided, flowing peacefully once again. Alex exhaled, relief evident on his face. "That was close. Too close." Ethan looked at the foals, who nuzzled him gently, their powers calm and harmonious. "They're okay," he whispered. "We did it," Sarah smiled, hugging her son. "Yes, Ethan, we did it together. The mountain is safe for now. And the foals, they've proven themselves as true guardians." The heart chamber glowed softly, a testament to the enduring bond between humans, foals, and the mountain. Outside, the valley lay in quiet splendor, the night alive with whispers of elemental harmony. The foals grazed peacefully, their presence a constant reminder that vigilance, courage, and empathy were the pillars of guardianship, and though shadows of the past would always linger, the Bennett, the Foals, and the mountain stood ready to face them, united in purpose and in trust. Harmony had been restored once more. But the lessons were clear. Guardianship was eternal, and the balance of life, magical or mundane, required constant care, courage, and unwavering respect. The night settled over the valley, stars reflecting in the streams, leaves shimmering with moonlight, and the foals resting, their energies calm. Sarah, Ethan, and Alex remained vigilant, knowing the mountain's secrets were precious, sacred, and eternal. And in the distance, beyond the protective perimeter of the foal's elemental guardianship, faint rustling hinted at new challenges, forces unseen waiting, watching. But for the Bennetts, the foals, and the heart chamber, the night remained a sanctuary. The first light of dawn painted the Appalachian peaks in soft gold, mist rising like ethereal veils across the valleys. The mountain was quiet, almost reverent, as if holding its breath after the night's turbulence. Sarah stood on the ridge above the heart chamber, Ethan at her side, watching the 12 foals move through the meadow below, their powers calm and radiant. Alex approached, relief and caution in his expression. "The stranger's gone for now. He underestimated the bond here, and the mountain's own will," Sarah nodded. "But that doesn't mean the threat is over. Greed can awaken dangers we don't foresee." She scanned the valley. Frost evaporated in the morning sun. Firefoal's mane flickered gently. Waterfoal's ripples smoothed the stream. Each foal had returned to its natural rhythm, independent yet harmonized with the mountain's pulse. Ethan crouched beside Memory Foal, who nudged him with intelligent warmth. "They're amazing," he whispered. "Not just magical, they're guardians. They've always been that," Sarah said softly. "We just had to learn to trust them. And ourselves." Their calm shattered with a shout from the far ridge. Jack Mason had returned, crawling through the underbrush with nets and traps, greed driving him. "Jack!" Sarah called firmly, stepping before Ethan. "Leave now! You don't understand what you're dealing with." Jack sneered, waving a metal contraption. "I understand more than you think. That mountain, those foals, they're my ticket. Hand them over, or find out what happens." The foals stirred, sensing danger. Shadowfoal thickened the darkness around him, forming illusions that made Jack appear surrounded by phantom guardians. Firefoal stamped, sending sparks flying. Lightningfoal crackled along the branches, a warning shot. Sarah inhaled deeply. "Ethan, now's the time. Guide them. Trust what you've learned." Ethan rose, extending awareness like he had in the heart chamber. He felt each foal's elemental presence, their intelligence and loyalty. They responded instantly, forming a protective perimeter. Jack charged, swinging his net. Shadowfoal's illusions disoriented him. Wind and growth foals coiled vines to slow his advance. Waterfoal surged currents across a creek, forcing him to adjust, while fire and frost foals formed a wall of heat and cold. Blocking him, Alex stepped beside Sarah. "We can't let him touch the heart chamber. If he disrupts the foals there, the balance could shatter." Sarah nodded. "Then we end this together." The confrontation escalated. Jack tried brute force, but each move was countered by the foal's coordinated defense. Memory Foal predicted his actions. Dream Foal created subtle illusions. Joy Foal radiated energy, strengthening allies. Jack's frustration mounted. He lunged for Firefoal, but Lightningfoal discharged a controlled spark, stopping him mid-step. Shadowfoal's illusions surrounded him with visions of failure and fear. Panic and greed collided, leaving him exposed. Sarah advanced, voice commanding, "Jack Mason! This ends now. The mountain and its guardians will not be exploited. Step back or face the consequences." For a moment Jack hesitated, glancing at the heart chamber. He saw the foals, elemental harmony undeniable, their bond with Ethan and Sarah visible. For the first time, he realized control could not be forced. Then he lunged one last time. Earthfoal shifted massive boulders into his path. Growthfoal's roots ensnared his feet, and Fire and Frostfoal's released a combined display of power, forcing him backward. Shadowfoal intensified illusions, showing visions of past misdeeds. Breathing heavily, Jack finally relented, slumping. You think you've won?" He spat, lacking conviction. Sarah stepped forward, firm. "No, Jack, you've lost. Return with the same intentions and you won't find mercy." The mountain protects itself and its guardians. Jack groaned, defeated, and fled into the forest. The Foals' powers immediately settled. The valley exhaled, quiet and majestic once more. Alex clapped Ethan gently on the shoulder. "You did well, that bond. It's rare and powerful." Ethan smiled, brushing Memory Foals' mane. "We did it together. I couldn't have done it without them." Sarah hugged him, relief and pride swelling. "You've grown so much, Ethan. You've learned to protect, understand, and lead with empathy." The foals gathered around, nuzzling their human guardians. Fire Foals' flames flickered gently, Water Foals' stream rippled peacefully, and Shadow Foals' darkness softened into protective shade. The heart chamber glowed faintly beneath the soil, energy stabilized and secure. Alex observed quietly. "This place, these creatures, they are extraordinary. The mountain will thrive because of you three. But guardianship is ongoing. Balance must always be respected." Sarah nodded. "We'll honor it. For the Foals, the mountain, and everyone who calls this valley home." As the sun climbed, the village awoke to renewed vitality. Crops shimmered with dew, streams sparkled, and even the wind carried a harmonious song. Villagers noticed subtle changes, but none guessed the true magic at work. Sarah and Ethan exchanged a knowing glance, their secret guardianship intact. Later, as the foals grazed, Alex prepared to depart. "I have other places to observe," he said, "but I leave knowing this mountain and its guardians are in capable hands." Sarah extended her hand. "Thank you, Alex, for guiding us and respecting what we protect." He smiled faintly. "Take care, Sarah. Take care, Ethan. The foals are yours now. And yours to protect." With that, he vanished into the forest. As evening fell, Sarah, Ethan, and the foals gathered on the ridge overlooking the valley. The sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The foals, fully realized elemental guardians, moved with freedom and intelligence, yet remained bound by loyalty and trust. Sarah looked at Ethan. "We've done more than survive. We've become part of something timeless." Ethan nodded, sweeping his gaze over the Foals and valley. "And we'll continue to protect it, together." Shadow Foal nuzzled Sarah, a reminder of darkness as shield and lesson. Fire Foal flicked a small flame in greeting. Water Foal mirrored Ethan's smile, and all 12 foals stood together, balanced and purposeful. The mountain hummed with satisfaction. Harmony had been restored, the foals secured, and the Bennett's bond strengthened beyond anything imagined. Though the world beyond would test them, Sarah knew the mountain, its magic, and its guardians were united, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The Foals, the Bennetts, and the mountain had become one, guardians of a secret, protectors of a balance that would endure through time. The wind carried their whispers, and the stars above twinkled with quiet approval. The legacy of guardianship had begun. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.